Big 10 Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
Hello and welcome into Big 10 Plus 4, college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. Myself, Dalton Scheller, joined by Tony Hollinsworth, Sam Sprunger, all in a row, as you got in front of you there on the screen if you're joining us. You even have a Sam fist pumping, and we really know why he's fist pumping. We'll get to it in a minute. But we finally have hit the finish line of this Big 10 race, just like everybody thought, or actually just like Sam thought, the Purdue Boilermakers would come out of this mess in the Big 10 West. They're heading to Lucas Oil Stadium to take on the Michigan Wolverines in the Big 10 championship game. So what we want to do here with this episode of Big 10 Plus 4, we got to start from the beginning of the weekend. How did we end up here? Because it took a couple of dominoes falling into the right places to make this happen. And we start with Nebraska and Iowa. And in a game where
were they, Dalton?
Oh, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you, where was it?
But I still don't even know. Was it Iowa City? I kept saying Lincoln, right?
Yes.
It was Iowa City. Okay.
Twice. You said Lincoln, Nebraska twice. You doubled down on it.
Look, the bender I've been on the last 2 weeks with sports, it's just been a dizzying carousel. So that's honestly, we're lucky we got the two schools right. That's
fair.
I'm just happy we got audio. That was the big thing. Is I wanted to make sure that we got the audio, and we put a little graphic that said it was actually in Iowa City. So we're fine.
Yeah, we fixed it.
So they
After
did
we
meet,
made fun of you.
well, as you should. They did meet in Iowa City. They played the game, and in a game where ESPN and MICH of the analytics said, "Yeah, I was going to walk away with this one." I mean, Nebraska, what else do they really have to play for? The rumor mills are churning. Matt Rhule's coming in. Looks like Mickey Joseph, the interim coach, isn't going to get a real shot at having that head coaching position. What do they have to play for? For whatever reason, the Huskers on one day rose up and said, not today, knocking off the Hawkeyes. I mean, folks, what did you make of this one?
I'll go ahead and start with it, Tony, if you don't mind. But it was, and I annoyed a bunch of people at the mall in Fort Wayne because I was walking around with my Dish app open and the game running, and when I clicked it on, I'm like, and here's the thing: I watched the game with hope that Nebraska had a shot. And when I turned it on the first time, it was 10-0. I'm like, oh my goodness, is this really going to happen? And it was just, they looked like they were playing for at least pride. Maybe they knew that that Leonard wasn't coming, or not Leonard, Joseph wasn't coming back. And so they wanted to give him a goodbye present worth it. Plus they're playing for pride of the N on the side of their helmet. And so like, it just is a testament to how crazy of a stupid scenarioed season the West has been, though.
Tony?
Yeah. And, to me, I think Nebraska wanted it more. And I think this is one of those that for whatever reason, after the second half, Iowa said, no, we should play some real football. Like, we should have a little bit of an offense with this defense. Because you think about it, at one point, it's 24-0, and you're like, oh, wow. Like, it's just game over. Like, Nebraska's going to run away with this. It's going to be no problem. And then all of a sudden, Iowa gets touchdown. And I even texted in the group chat, I was going to watch this be the Iowa comeback. Like, watch this be the thing. And it almost happened because for whatever reason, both teams just decided, yeah, we don't want to move the ball anymore. We'll turn it over a couple times. We don't really want to move the ball. But I mean, to me, I agree with Sam. I think Nebraska just wanted it more. I mean, Casey Thompson was sharp, 20 of 30, almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Trey Palmer had a great day, 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I mean, Iowa was playing with, Alex Padilla. I guess they finally gave, I don't know if Petrus got hurt or if they just said, yeah, man, time for you to finish out your time in Iowa here on the bench. Cause this is This is just anemic as all get out. So I'm happy that the Huskers won. I don't know if they won about the whole Matt Rhule hiring, but they won at least against Iowa.
Well, let me hit the sticking point here. What's your thoughts on the Matt Rhule hiring?
I mean, from college wise, he was great. Like, he rebuilt Temple, he rebuilt Baylor, and then that's what got him the job in the NFL with the Panthers. Watching him run an NFL organization, he has been one of those. It's proven the whole moving from college to NFL did not work for him very well. I get a little worried and hesitant because that doesn't always mean it's going to work out when they go back to college necessarily either, because you're used to having to do things, he's been out of the college for 3-4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's changed a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit.
Oh, no. It's changed a lot. You're right. Like that's a 3 or 4 year. That's as hard to miss as possible in college athletics history. Continue.
So the 4 years that you shouldn't miss if you were going to miss any.
Yeah.
And not only that, but then you're going from you didn't have a lot of great success in the NFL. Like, if you had decent success and you decided to go back, you could probably ride that wave, that momentum. You ran a dumpster fire in Carolina for the Panthers. So I'm like, Nebraska,
one thing I would jump in to say is maybe, though, his involvement in the NFL, dealing with players that are getting paid large sums of money to do jobs that they're drafted to do, it might transition into today's NCAA football, college football world, maybe to where they're dealing with, players are making some good money. I mean, they're not multi-million-dollar, mega deals, anything of that sort, but they're making money now. So you're going to have to deal with these guys and there's going to be levels where some guys are only making this amount of money and this other guy's making this amount of money, and there are going to be clashes. Maybe he did well in college before, so he's got those chops, but then he's also got the point where he's been dealing with players that are getting paid a lot of money, and maybe he's able to transition that into college.
And if you kind of go along that logic, I mean, he's dealt with free agency before. And folks, I know we talk a lot about how college athletics is turning professional and how the amateurism is dying. What we know about college athletics is dying. But I don't think we are fully prepared for what's about to happen this offseason in terms of what the transfer portal looks like. It's not just people are hitting the portal for playing time issues or anything else. We're going to be having players that get real minutes, get real playing time at schools, hit the portal just to see what packages await them in the portal for NIL. Like, it's motivated now, not just by playing time, maybe by trying to go home, go to a different location, play for a different coach. Like, I think this will be the first offseason that we see money and NIL just become a bidding war in transfer portal for guys who really are already key parts of their teams. Start to kind of let that soak in, because that's going to be a thing this offseason. And I'm curious to kind of see how that works. But much to that point, free agency, Matt Rhule's dealt with it. I mean, if you're looking for things to kind of carry with you, because I legitimately think we're getting ready to enter a new wave of free agency period with the NIL, where it's just highest bidder. I mean, it's going to be something else. But nonetheless, let's get back to this. So Nebraska beats Iowa. So what did that mean? That meant the Iowa Hawkeyes are out of the Big Ten West race. If Purdue knocks off Indiana, keeps the Old Oaken Bucket, Purdue would go to Lucas Oil Stadium and play in the Big Ten championship game for the very first time. Purdue gets in, knocks off Indiana, and they're headed to the championship game. So how do they get it done? And also, I suppose I want to start here, Sam. Going to the Big Ten championship game or keeping the Old Oaken Bucket? Which one meant more?
Oh, it was the bucket. And Tony and I talked about this.
Wow.
Tony and I talked about this last week. When I was growing up, I was dealing with 3-8, 4-7. Like I told Tony, Jim Coletto's best season at Purdue, 5-6. That's what I was dealing with every year. And so when it came to the bucket, it was always beat IU, get the bucket. That was our Super Bowl. That was our bowl game. And it was just always, no matter how much of a dumpster fire Purdue's season was, we were going to go play for the bucket. And if we won the bucket, okay, it wasn't a successful year, but it was at least a good ending to the year. So I would definitely, it's kind of the basketball, Big Ten basketball look where, a Big Ten title is cherished a little bit more than, success in the postseason. Kind of the same thing. I would take the bucket every day of the week and twice on Sunday over an appearance in the Big Ten championship. Now, that's not to say I'm not going to cheer my butt off, but to me.
Well, of course not, but that's wild to me because you can win the bucket every year. And honestly, all you have to do is just beat Indiana to get that bucket. But
No. Beat IU.
Spoken as a true Boilermaker.
That's
but
right.
I mean, like, you just have to knock off the Hoosiers to get that bucket. You had to go through it becomes less impressive if I start rattling the teams off. Actually, I'll stop. But you had to go through a collection of teams to get to Indianapolis for this championship game. And you're still going bucket.
What did it take?
It took a lot of losing from other teams.
Correct. And see, all you have to do to take the bucket is beat IU.
Well, I was going to say, a lot of times you can get the bucket because Indiana loses. Like, it doesn't even have to be so much about Purdue winning.
Not necessarily the point. It's the fact that the Purdue score is higher than the IU score at the end of the day. That's what matters. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dalton. I've been beating this drum all season that Purdue, this is their one chance to get, for a really long time, if not forever and a day away, to get to the Big Ten championship. I want that to happen. I want it to happen. I absolutely do. I am so elated that it did. But it's one of those that if Iowa beats Nebraska on Friday, that game is still big.
Mm-hmm. I need to get Tony in here in a minute, but I got two more questions for Sam. One, are you going to the game?
I am not.
Oh, that's a shot in the heart.
Teacher. You want to give me tickets? Sure.
But second off, how do you deal with the fan complications, or how do you handle this? Because if Indiana didn't beat Illinois earlier this year, then Purdue's not in that championship game. So you really have Indiana to thank to help put you in the spot.
I do believe Purdue finished a game ahead of Illinois, didn't they? Or did they end tied?
If Illinois beat Northwestern Saturday, which is shame on me for not knowing, they tied.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Good for us for taking advantage of what the Hoosiers were able to do early on.
So is there a thank you note to Bloomington, or you just
do your job? That was what it was expected. Yes, absolutely. So no, there's no little special, gift basket or thank you card or what, even well wishes. I don't wish harm on them, but I don't necessarily wish them well.
All right, Tony, I didn't mean to box you out. I needed to get to the black and gold Homer, though, for his takes on this big event and celebration. But, Tony, what did you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, this
I
was
still do have insights on the game, too, so I'll come back to that.
Okay. This, to me, was kind of the epitome of just, Purdue's season overall. Because, I mean, you think about it, it was 7-3 throughout a majority of the game till about beginning of the third quarter, and then Purdue kind of kicked it into high drive, and then the game ran off from there. So this is kind of the epitome of Purdue struggling initially against teams that they should pretty easily beat. Now, don't get me wrong, Indiana was coming off of a big win against Michigan State.
Didn't you predict IU to win?
I did. I thought IU would win.
Okay,
I did.
You did. I missed that.
I did. Wow. I did because Dalton, this was my thing. It was like, to me, it literally, like, I don't think it was I don't think Indiana really cared about the whole bucket thing. I mean, they care, but to me, it was like IU's biggest goal would be, we just want to throw a monkey wrench in Purdue's plans and just keep them out of the Big Ten championship, just because, like, not only would they potentially win the rivalry, but they would ruin Purdue's chances of going to the Big Ten championship game. It would be just like a double, like, little middle finger from Indiana to Purdue. Like, I'm just saying.
You got something there, Sam?
You know what? This is a game of two, or the tale of two different halves, because He's right. IU came out, and IU was playing very well. I mean, what was it, the first or second play? It was definitely the first drive. They hit for a long run and go up 7-0, like boom, like that. And Purdue just couldn't get the offense going. They couldn't get the offense going. Their defense started to firm up to keep IU from just running at will and scoring, but you just didn't feel comfortable. After halftime, it was a completely different Purdue team. Now, the injury, and forgive me, I forget the IU quarterback's name that broke his leg.
Williams.
Now, yeah, Williams. I was watching the game, and as soon as he planted and basically just fell down, I looked at my brother-in-law and said, he's really hurt. I said, did you see him plant and then all of a sudden just fall down? He's like, no. And, well, they never showed a replay. So I told him, I said, that has to be, it's very gruesome and they don't want you to see it. Mm-hmm. So my heart goes out to that young man because he chose IU and that he hurt himself, or got hurt. But no, in all seriousness, I hope he recovers and is back able to play again because he's a good quarterback. But I think that was kind of the turning point. It was late in the second quarter, and that kind of, they got fired up. You can only keep that adrenaline up so long, and then you got to go to a break, and they just couldn't recover. And Purdue came back with a fire and was able to put 14 points up basically right away in the second half, and it kind of just made the game a completely different game.
So Purdue ends up winning the Big Ten West. They go to the Big Ten championship game. Before we end the first quarter, just want to make sure, because last time was keeping everybody tapped off. Everybody got all their Purdue Indiana takes out?
Yeah.
Okay, let's hit the second quarter.
Although.
There you go. See,
it's like I saw Sam's face. I was like, I feel like he has something that he really wants to say, but he's holding it. He's holding it.
I'm not going to totally. I'm not predicting anything, but gosh,
by 56 over Michigan. That's what I heard Sam say.
Wouldn't it be nice to see Purdue perform well on Saturday?
Yeah.
Oh, I know there's a rallying crew, including me, that is hoping for such an occasion. But no, I mean, honestly, all joking aside and messing with Sam aside, this is one of the better weeks in Purdue athletics history, I would argue. But when you combine football and basketball, so I wanted to make sure he had enough room to get everything out.
Honestly, Dalton, let me say this. I mean, Saturday's game, watching them beat IU and secure the West, was probably the second most satisfying game I've watched in my life. And that includes the Rose Bowl that they lost in. That is, the only game that was better was Purdue beating Ohio State, Drew Brees' senior year, to kind of solidify that they were going to the Rose Bowl. Then after that, watching Saturday's game, second most satisfying and most, biggest win that I've seen Purdue have.
That's incredible. And then you pair it with what I was enamored with, Purdue basketball, which we'll be talking about later on in the show. But let's get to the second quarter and get to the East Division.
I totally hijacked that.
No, again, this is the Purdue moment. I mean, feel free. This is want to make sure you have the room for it.
It's my show. I think I can gloat a little bit, right? Isn't that the thing?
Well, let's take a look over in the East Division, because the game, we were so excited for this. Number 2 Ohio State, number 3 Michigan, and it just kind of folded upon itself. A 45-23 final. Michigan wins this one. Now, I have some thoughts about this, but I'm curious what you both think. We'll start with Tony. Tony, what did you take away from this Michigan-Ohio State game?
Yeah, I mean, this is really what we expected. I mean, Michigan wanted to come out. They wanted to run the ball. Ohio State knew that. Ohio State was going to try to do everything they could to stop it. And really, this wasn't what I thought it was going to be, where I thought both offenses maybe struggle a little bit to try to get a rhythm, see what the other one's going to do, and then after halftime, we'll see a different game. Unfortunately, that kind of ended up being the case. Both offenses actually did pretty well early on, and then in the second half, Michigan said, hold on, let me get this figured out. The thing that honestly surprised me the most is that Michigan did exactly what Ohio State thought that they weren't going to do. Michigan basically said, JJ McCarthy, hey buddy, you're going to earn that 5-star prospect rating that you got. You're going to earn it today. And And honestly, if you look at all the scores that happen, mainly Michigan scored because of just big plays. They took the top off of Ohio State's defense, and they went crazy on it. I mean, you look at a lot of Ohio State scores. I mean, they're one big one. It was a 42-yard touchdown pass to Marvin Harrison Jr. Before that, J.J. McCarthy, 3 plays, 69-yard pass to Cornelius Johnson for a touchdown, a 75-yard pass from J.J. McCarthy, then a 45-yard pass, and then after that, Donovan Edwards said, here, I'm going to actually run now, and basically caps off the rest of the game. So that's probably what surprised me the most, is this was, and if y'all can believe this, and this is why I'm still not completely sold on the whole J.J. McCarthy experiment, this was his second highest passing yardage game all season.
Mm-hmm.
His highest passing game was against IU. He threw for 304 yards. After that, this was his second highest one. And ever since the Penn State game, actually, if I remember right, ever since Penn State, his completion percentage has been 60% or less. Like, he only got 50% this time. So that's probably what surprised me the most, is Jim's like, yep, all right, JJ, you're going to earn it today.
Sam?
I am pretty surprised by the fact that it was such a wide margin. I completely, and I'm willing to admit it, Dalton, I completely underestimated what Michigan was going to be this year. I didn't have, I thought that they wouldn't have enough. I knew they would have a good defense. I knew they would have the offensive weapons. I just didn't realize that it was going to be on par, maybe, or at least closely on par with what they had last year. Because they had a heck of a year last year. They deserved their spot in the playoff. And I totally agreed with, them being number 2 at the time that it came out. But this year, I didn't see there was any way that they would be what they were. And they've totally and completely went beyond that. But as for Saturday's game, it looked like Ohio State was trying to make McCarthy beat them, and they finally said, okay, fine, we're gonna. Mm-hmm. And then the longer Ohio State's offense couldn't produce points, that wore the defense down. I think the defense did a decent job at the start for at least 3 quarters of that game. Mm-hmm. It was the 4th quarter when we got to the point where those big uglies that you always talk about, Dalton, mm-hmm. they were pushing around a tired Ohio State defense, and that's what won them the game. So good on them. Congratulations, I guess, if I have to, whatever.
But no, and it's a good point, because I do think Michigan's offensive line is probably the best in the country, and I think that absolutely played a part. But much to what
in your mouth a little bit there.
I've been dealing with that over the weekend. Still trying to let it process. But much to the point that both of you are bringing up, if you're box score watching, you're looking at this as a blowout. This was a good game for a long period of time, and in Michigan, just haymaker, finish it out. And that's where I really take away from this is, a lot of people kind of want to sit there and say Ohio State is broke. Look, you loses to Michigan 2 years in a row, despite the 11-win seasons. You lose to Michigan twice in a row. This is broke. Ryan Day's got a broke product on his hands. And I don't know necessarily that that's the case. I really am having a hard time analyzing what just happened, because Michigan is not a home run team. It's a team that will beat you up 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Just bang, bang, bang. Like, that's been them. It has not been haymaker, explosive plays for touchdowns. That's not been Michigan all year. That's been Ohio State all year, where they just snap back and you look up every time at the TV and somebody's dashing for 60 yards every single time you look at the screen. That's not been Michigan. I think really what this speaks to is how pivotal and how the margins can completely be erased by just these explosive plays. And it's out of character for Michigan to have those. So I'm having a hard time, I suppose, analyzing and digesting. I don't think Michigan's 22 points above Ohio State. I think for whatever reason, and this is maybe where the true analysis needs to reside, is what allowed Michigan for really the first time this season to have those kind of home run plays. That's not saying, because I don't want anybody to take me out of context, that's not saying Michigan's been bad. Michigan's been a great football team, but their DNA, their identity has not been to just drop a hammer on you for 70 yards of play where every time you're looking at the screen, it's a touchdown. I don't know if it's on Ohio State. I don't know if it's something different Michigan did, but that's where I think the true analysis needs to be.
I think, honestly, Dalton, I don't know how right I am. I still think, though, that with Ohio State wanting to really concentrate on eliminating or slowing down the running game, eliminating the short pass game, it allowed Michigan to have to go after those long hits and that's where they came. I think maybe it was a combination of Michigan State being a little bit better at doing that than we thought, but then Ohio State giving that option to them and not really necessarily concentrating on taking that big hit away because you're not ready for it.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is like Ohio State's not the first team to say, hey, we need to box up Blake Corum. Like, if we're going to lose today, J.J. McCarthy's got to be the one to beat us. Why is it that a bunch of 5-stars are being lost in the defensive backfield while receivers, unattended, 20 yards, nobody within them? Like, how is that happening? That needs to be addressed.
Well, I'm in the heart of Ohio State country. Sorry, Tony. I just wanted to throw this. Yeah, they say they need a new defensive coordinator around here, and I'm like, are you
1 year?
You brought him in 1 year, okay? And for those Ohio State fans that want Ryan Day gone, if last year you were like, well, there's always one bump in the road, and now this year you want him fired, he's up. He's still winning 92% of his games. Now, if you didn't like him becoming the coach at the start of his tenure, you be you. But don't call for this guy to be fired simply because he's lost 2 in a row to Michigan.
Well, it's PTSD of John Cooper. That's all Ohio State fans see right now.
Heard John Cooper's name so many times. Let's look at it this way, kids. This is his 4th game with them against Michigan.
I believe 3rd game, but 4th year because they didn't play in COVID.
That's right. Okay, so. Yeah,
he would have beat him by 100 that year.
For sure.
Just for context.
Now he's 1-2. Give him a 4th year for crying out loud. Give him, against Michigan, whatever. But here's the thing: he still wins 92% of his games.
It's their first Big Ten home loss since 2015 when Michigan State beat him with a field goal. The windmill. You knew I would have that stat ready. But no, Tony, go ahead, jump in there.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to say this is a little bit of because we saw that Blake Corum was going to play. We knew that he wasn't 100%. To me, this was just the epitome of Michigan kind of did what Georgia did to Alabama last year from the SEC championship to, the national championship of, okay, we don't potentially have our big player. Why don't we move to the stuff that we've, secretly been kind of planning on so that Ohio State's completely caught off guard when we do it? Like J.J. McCarthy can throw the ball, and it surprised everybody that he could do that. Not only that he could throw the ball, that he could throw the ball well against non-cupcake teams. Let me just rephrase that, because he did great against like UConn and Colorado State and Hawaii, but the cupcakes does not count. So yeah, to me, that I think is what Michigan did is they finally realized while we could probably try to do the Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and then just have J.J. McCarthy manage, we need to be able to adapt. We need to be flexible, and we need to be able to show that we can still be offensively productive. And if it means we have to do big plays because they think that we're just going to run all the time, okay, cool. Now, I think this might have exposed Michigan a little bit as we move into the college football playoffs, because now some of these teams are probably going to be ready for that. Like, oh, maybe we need to potentially have that option available. Maybe we need to have a safety play a little bit farther back and not completely try to, just get in the box. So it's possible. I know Sam and I talked about it, and I don't know how far we would want to potentially dive into this for the future. If one of these teams has an upset this weekend, Ohio State could come back in. They could have a rematch. You never know. But I know one thing.
Be the first round.
You know who's not going into the playoffs? And I will bet money right now. You know who's not going to the playoffs? The Alabama Crimson Tide. Bama fans, stop it. You have 2 losses. And don't give me, oh, well, they're good 2 losses. There's no such thing as good loss. There's none. Stop
They've
it.
gotten in with 2 losses before, Tony. Nick Saban, it's just an inevitable thing hanging around.
No, actually, no. If they do, I hope they do, and I hope they just get demolished. But you know what? I hope they face TCU, and I hope TCU drops 63 on Alabama. That's what I'm hoping.
It would be the most Bama thing for them to come back and actually win this whole thing. Go ahead, Sam.
The conversation that I tweeted about, and this whole, Nick Saban saying that the Iron Bowl was just that good quality win that would require the committee to at least look at Alabama as a potential playoff team, and I honestly think this is NIL leveling the playing field. The parity is so much wider now in college football, because now it's not, I can't just get any of the kids I want because I'm Nick Saban. Now there has to be something else that goes with it.
Right.
And whatever. I think you totally invalidate a college football playoff if you put a 2-loss Alabama, who hasn't really beaten a great team by any means. I mean, they did beat Texas A&M, but that's a knock.
Look how that finished.
Yeah, but
LSU could do that.
It would be a knock on the CFP if they were to put Alabama over any other 1-loss team that's in the top 10.
Yeah, and that's probably what frustrates me the most. And it's funny. I don't know if y'all remember a few years ago when they had talked about expanding the playoffs. Nick Saban was like, no, we don't need to expand the playoffs. And that's when Alabama was basically number 1, number 2 every single year. No, don't expand the playoffs. Don't expand.
Now he's beating the drum for it.
Now he's like, oh, no, I think there's some 2-loss teams. Oh, there's some 2-loss
because he knows that his good seasons are going to be 10-2 now.
Yep.
Because he's not getting the chair. And that's not damning him, saying he's any less of a coach in his knowledge of X's and O's, but his Jimmies and Joes are not going to be as elite as everybody else's going forward. So he realizes he's kind of going to need to adapt like Coach K did. He was a 4-year guy. His players stuck around for 4 years all the time, and then all of a sudden Elton Brand happened. And he left early. And then Corey Maggette came for 1 year. Now he's got a McDonald's top 5 or a starting 5 McDonald's All-American top 5, or he did. I'm sorry. He's not there anymore. Obviously, I know this. But, but he adapted. I don't know that Nick Saban can't. He is a very, very kind of almost Bob Knight-ish style. It's my way or the highway. And I don't know if it's good, but 10-2, I think is a good season for teams like Alabama and stuff now because of that.
I think he can. And real quick, because I don't want to go overboard too much.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can, because we've seen the adaptation or the change in Alabama the last 10 years. Like, if you remember, what was Alabama probably known for the most?
Run defense.
Stifling defense and run the ball down your throat.
Chris Henry, Mark Ingram, 2 Heisman Trophy winning running backs.
Yeah, and then what did he move to? He moved to Jalen Hurts. He moved to Tua. He moved to Mac Jones, guys that can throw the ball down the field and still a very good defense and a complementary run game. Now it seems like he's more of a balance. Now I do think he is probably going to struggle, because now you can't say, Nick Saban can't be like, do you want to win a championship here at Alabama or not? He can't do that anymore. It is going to be more competitive with the NIL money. So I think he can adapt. Just the fact that he's in such a scramble mode right now just blows my mind, because they just got another top prospect next year that's a 5-star quarterback right after Bryce Young.
He's gonna get those players that coming out of high school that want to go to an elite program, but then after 1 year they're going to realize it's not what they wanted, and they're going to enter the transfer portal, and they're going to be an extremely good player somewhere else.
Yep.
Let me bring this conversation back home and give each of you 30 seconds here before we hit the halftime break. Each of you get 30 seconds. Let's bring it back to Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan's won the last two. Obviously, Ohio State has won most of them this century, all but I think 3 or 4. How do we view this rivalry now? Start with Sam.
It's honestly, even during Ohio State's big, dominance, it was always still there. I mean, you knew Ohio State, even though they were just running them, they still hated Michigan. They still held that game as being the biggest game of the season.
Let me interject. What I mean by this is that Ohio State 2 years ago, it felt like we're so far ahead of Michigan that this gap would never close. Now, all of a sudden, do we feel like Michigan has control of this series in current times?
I don't. I think it's maybe closing the gap, because you're right. We did think it just 2 years ago. It looked like Ohio State was head, shoulders, and even waist above what Michigan was. I think they've maybe got it to the shoulders, so now Ohio State, I still hold Ohio State better than Michigan, maybe not this year, but overall going forward still.
Tony?
Yeah, I say no, because to me, once that offensive line starts to get picked apart, which this coming NFL draft, there's going to be a lot of them offensive linemen probably picked in the late first round, early second round for a lot of depth and starting positions. Once that happens, I don't know if Michigan's going to be able to rebound that well. Like, Ohio State is still a very prominent school. They're always in the top 5. They never have a problem getting talent. Michigan has kind of had to fight and struggle for that the last few years. So to me, it's still Ohio State's to lose. And to me, Michigan is just kind of enjoying what they've been able to build the last couple of years. Now, they may be able to prove me wrong and build off of that, but I still say, to me, more people in recent years, for a lot of these kids watching college football, see Ohio State as a more prominent program than they do Michigan.
And it's interesting, and I'll finish the segment off with this thought. Talked with Tim May, who's covered Ohio State football for more than 40-some years recently, and it was interesting. He brought up a thought where he said, Ohio State's been shaping a roster to try and win a national championship, not to win the Big Ten and beat Michigan, and I don't know that those two are in the same. So you got one foot on a ski that's trying to beat Michigan now, and you got one foot on a ski that's trying to win a national championship and be able to beat the SEC teams. And watching those skis kind of go opposite ways and split and wipe out, as Ryan Day and Ohio State have, it's going to be interesting to see how the philosophy maybe moves, stays the same, improves, whatever, moving forward. Let's hit the halftime break.
You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
And I'm John.
And we host the Beard Owl Podcast, the podcast where we talk about 2 of the greatest things in the world, beer and Weird Al.
And a bunch of other stuff.
That's right. Do you like nostalgia? Do you like sibling banter? Do you like beer? Do you like Weird Al? Are you human?
If you answered yes to any of those questions, give us a listen. Become one of our loyal commenters.
This is Beer in Front. Every week I'll talk about a beer that maybe we've forgotten along the way while we get those check-ins and badges. Being the Chicago beer guy, I'll also talk about great craft beer in the city of Chicago. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. That's Beer in Front, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
Time for the second half as we get going here in the third quarter. Now, I'm pulling a little bit of an audible on our gentlemen here, Tony and Sam, because we have such a limited time left. This is going to be a quick third quarter. Let's quickly go over Big Ten women's basketball, and in the fourth quarter, we'll go men's basketball. But for women's basketball, I wanted to dedicate a moment to this because you take a look now at the new AP Top 25. Ohio State women's basketball number 4, still unbeaten. Indiana number 5. From there, Iowa sits at number 10. Michigan is number 17. Maryland's number 20. And that's the Big Ten in the AP Top 25. Some big games coming up tonight. Wednesday, number 4 Ohio State takes on number 18 Louisville. That's at 7:30 at night. And then on Thursday, You have number 5 Indiana and number 6 North Carolina, 6 o'clock Thursday night. That's a 5 versus 6 matchup. Then you have number 7 Notre Dame taking on number 20 Maryland at 6:30. Number 10 Iowa and number 12 NC State at 8:30 Thursday night. So a lot of big-time matchups as a part of what could be the final ACC Big Ten Challenge that maybe we ever have. And I think it's the 15th on the women's side. But nonetheless, we saw some teams really come through looking pretty good. Ohio State and Indiana over the holiday trip in their tournaments. Iowa ended up actually with a loss during its time in Portland against number 3 UConn. Caitlin Clark's 30-some points just wasn't enough. And so the Huskies got to win there. For Michigan State, I'll shamelessly plug in about the Spartans, given my fan interest. Michigan State takes on Georgia Tech Thursday at 8 o'clock. But out in Portland, we might have seen a breakthrough moment with this Michigan State team. They lost both games, but on Sunday, when they took on number 18 Oregon, the Spartans were down 17. And it was one of those moments where you're kind of like, what's going to happen from here? Is it a folded up kind of thing? Is it a fight back kind of thing? We saw the team roar back, had it tied at 68 in the fourth quarter with the number 18 team Oregon in the country. So a lot of good things happening in Big Ten women's basketball. I know we got more thoughts on men's basketball. Do either of you want to chip anything there, or should we move to men?
That excuse me, that actually gives you a really good feeling that the state's able to do that against a team that's ranked so highly. And nobody ever wants to be down by 18, but it's how you, and that defines the character of a team, is how you respond at those low points. It's not the high points; it's the low points of what defines you as a good overall team. If you don't ever experience the low points, you're not gonna know how to recover from them when you get to them. They're gonna have that in the bank, knowing coming later on in the season they're down by 7 to Iowa with 2 minutes left. They've got that in the bank of, hey, we got to keep going. We can make this happen. So it's interesting to see. Hopefully, the Spartans are going to be able to, do something.
Yeah,
Tony.
Hopefully, and I will say too, are we kind of surprised a little bit that Iowa has 2 losses on the season now? One of them was to UConn, so like that one, I think everybody's kind of like, okay, they lost to another top team. They lost to Kansas State.
Yeah.
Like that, and now keep in mind, it was a close one. It's not like Kansas State, took over by no means, but just the fact that they lost to Kansas State, you're kind of a little bit surprised, or at least I am anyway. And the other 2 things I'm really surprised about is that Indiana, both the women's and men's, are ranked in the top 10 for both divisions. Both sports, only teams that are undefeated for both at the current moment.
What team's that, Tony? I'm sorry.
Indiana.
IU. Oh, okay. IU. Gotcha.
Hoosiers. And then it's ironic that, North Carolina as well, and that Indiana, North Carolina for the men's play tonight. And then, obviously Thursday they play for the women. So it'll be that to me is going to be a really cool matchup to see. Do the women get some bragging rights over the men? Do the men maybe get some bragging rights? Do they both win? Who knows?
Well, and you bring up a great point. Let's go ahead and hit the fourth quarter and talk a little Big Ten men's hoops. All right. I know we're a little short on time, but Tony brought up Big Ten men's basketball. If we look at the top 25 poll, checking in at number 5, the Purdue Boilermakers, and it's well-deserved. I want to talk about that in a moment. Indiana.
Is it?
Really?
I'm just joking. I was going to say. Just see what Sam's reaction is like. Are you kidding me?
I was more outraged than.
Everybody's allowed to have their own opinion. It just matters whether it's wrong or not.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Indiana checks in at number 10. Illinois is number 16. Michigan State number 20. Maryland number 22. Ohio State number 25. And that's the Big Ten in the latest AP Top 25. Recapping what happened for a couple of teams, Purdue and Michigan State both were out in Portland. I got to see both of them up close and personal out there.
It really confused me because you don't have normally there are tournaments, and when you have those preseason tournaments, you don't have teams from the same conference. I didn't realize there were 2 separate tournaments going on.
That's why they did it that way. 16 teams there for the men, 8 for the women out there in Portland. Purdue was in the legacy bracket. Michigan State was in the invitational bracket for the Phil Knight Invitational. But Michigan State walked out going 2-1 in the tournament, lost the first game against Alabama. But considering that the Spartans were without Malik Hall and Jaden Akins in all 3 games, not too shabby if they can kind of survive without some of those players out there. Meanwhile, for Purdue absolutely took it to some of the better teams in the country. I had this stat here, and of course it washes away from me as soon as I need to pull it up. But it talked about the dominance that the Boilermakers had in its 2 games. Here it is. Purdue beat number 6 Gonzaga by 18 points on Friday, and then beat number 8 Duke by 19 points on Sunday. That's the second team ever to beat 2 AP top 10 teams by 18 plus points on a neutral site in the same week, joining UCLA in the 1968 Final Four.
Wow.
And I should give credit. That was Jared Burson who had that tweet on Twitter. But it goes to show this Purdue team, the question entering the year was the backcourt. Who's going to handle the ball? Who's going to take care of these things? Fletcher Lawyer looks like a senior, not a freshman. And between Braden Smith and some of the others, like this is a real crew.
I think Braden Smith is already playing at junior level too. Like I was watching, it was against Gonzaga. He had a rebound that he got. He came down with it, and Edey, I believe it was Zach Edey, was coming back behind him, and he just kind of went whoop right behind his head, and it went for a big dunk. And it was not saying that young kids can't make those plays, but at that level, with that accuracy, with that against that opponent, I didn't see Braden Smith being that good yet.
And you should never depend on a young person being able to do that right away. That's like if it happens, it should be a welcoming surprise, and that's kind of what's happened. But Purdue, all of a sudden, the trajectory has changed because now we know what these underclassmen can do.
And I worried. My initial thought after this weekend was, "Oh my God, could Purdue be one of the better teams in the country?" Mm-hmm. And I'm not. And I was worried that it was me just being that homer of not wanting to give up last year's, greatness of what it could have been, and kind of holding on to that. Honestly, I don't think I'm being a homer too much to say Purdue's easily. I think that top 5 ranking, and we talked about how the AP poll on the football side is a reactionary poll. I think that's exactly the same on the basketball side, but I think for at least this week, that 5 rank absolutely fits Purdue.
All right, we got to. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, sorry. I was going to be real quick. I think this kind of shows too that like some of these top teams that we've noticed have like dominated again a little bit with the NIL deal coming in there. A lot of these other teams are going to be coming in and they've played well. I mean, you look at how close Michigan State took, Gonzaga close to, and then the fact that, Purdue was able to beat them. You look at the fact that, Michigan State beat Kentucky. How? I don't know still. And the fact that Purdue beat Duke. I mean, you look at those were the teams that were like the top 5. And, and all of us at the beginning of the season were like, man, Villanova. Villanova. Yep. And Michigan State beat them. So you're kind of sitting there thinking, okay, how good can some of these Big Ten teams be? Because we're like, we don't really know. We can't really see a favorite. And so far from what it looks like, it's like, no, everybody's just about on a solid playing field. There, to me so far, and obviously it's still early in the season, there's nobody that's kind of a clear-cut definitive favorite, because even Houston I know is number 1 right now. I'm not completely so, because I watched him against Oregon on that horrible stadium floor. I know we talked. I hate that floor. That's like awful. But they struggled a little bit against Oregon, and no knock to Oregon. They're a decent basketball team, but it's like there's nobody right now that I'm like, man, this is going to be a strong team that's going to be like favored to win it.
Well, and I'm not saying that it's going to be anywhere close, but maybe the Big Ten's not as bad as we thought it was going to be this year.
Agreed.
Maybe there's going to be some teams that there might be a 6-bid league, a team bid, for the Big Ten rather than maybe 4 or 5 or 8. We just don't know. Maybe they're better than what we were assuming they were going to be.
Yeah, it very well could be. And by the way, for the Big Ten ACC Challenge, tonight, Wednesday night, Ohio State, number 25, takes on number 17, Duke. Number 18, North Carolina, and number 10, Indiana will battle. And then Friday, number 16, Illinois, and number 22, Maryland will begin Big Ten action. So it's all ramping up just on the tail end of
Purdue
football.
has Florida State for the 17th year in a row.
That's true.
Yeah.
All
Michigan
right.
I think I've seen them play Clemson. I think I've seen them play Clemson and Florida State and maybe Georgia Tech once in this.
All right, real quick, Sam, do you want to plug social media on the way out the door?
For sure. For social media, I'll wait for Tony to see if hey, thanks, Tony, for producing today. By the way, I'm on location, so not able to handle it. But if you want to catch us on the TikToks, the the Twitter sphere, or the Instagram, it's all covered up by that live banner. It's a Big 10 +4. You spell out the plus, gentlemen. They won't let you put the little emblem. So Facebook, Big 10 +4, put the plus. Don't spell it out. Tony, I think we've said they'll figure it out for you if you just type in Big 10 plus. Either way. Odd Pods Media, find us there. .com, find us there. Sorry, I'm kind of going on the fly. And then every week, and we're starting to do two shows a week on ASAP Network. We're having a good time.
Absolutely. This is a big one here.
It's good to have you back in the office. Yeah,
I know.
Here for the moment, anyway. So as
where am I going to put my coat now? My coat chair is gone.
Well, on Friday it'll be open again. You can set it there.
Yes, I was gonna say I'm gonna walk in over the weekend and see Tony's like shoe dust on my desk as he had his feet kicked up, all comfortable.
Yep.
But no, nonetheless, for myself, Dalton Shetler, Tony Hollinsworth, Sam Sprunger, we want to thank you so much for joining us this week. And of course, we will be back on Friday. At least these two knuckleheads will. Until then, so long from Big 10 +4.
See ya.
Bye.